Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, we're going to be focusing on the file of tourism now. 2023 is slated to be the year of tourism here in Egypt, a very integral part and sector of the Egyptian economy, constituting about 12% of the GDP of Egypt. We're going to be focusing on the state's efforts to revitalize this sector. But before we start doing that, let's check out some of the stories making the news today. And we'll start off with President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, who confirmed today that Egypt welcomes Italian officials and companies, referring to the existence of vast horizons of economic cooperation at all levels. This came during President el-Sisi's meeting with the Italian Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Antonio Tajani, who headed a senior Italian delegation, including heads of a number of major Italian companies. Welcoming the delegation, the head of state stressed the strong political will of both sides to develop bilateral ties and push forward achievements and interests of the two friendly nations. President el-Sisi highlighted the government's keenness to enhance prospects for economic cooperation at all levels. The meeting tackled means of activating the strategic partnership between the two countries, as well as ways of expanding joint economic cooperation, especially in the field of energy. The two sides also exchanged visions regarding a number of regional and international issues of mutual concern, including illegal immigration. They agreed to coordinate efforts to confront growing international, political and economic challenges. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli held an expanded meeting with the visiting Italian foreign minister. Attending the meeting were representatives of leading Italian corporations. Presidential spokesman Ahmed Fahmy said the visit of the high-level Italian delegation comes within the framework of the established friendship relations between Egypt and Italy. The visit aims to activate the strategic partnership between the two countries and lay the foundation stone for further economic cooperation by strengthening the presence of Italian companies in Egypt. Also, Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli presided over a weekly cabinet meeting during which he reviewed a number of economic files. Madbouli gave his directives over ensuring the availability of different commodities and domestic market control in coordination with governors nationwide ahead of the approaching holy month of Ramadan. Premier Madbouli and Minister of Planning and Economic Development discussed Egypt's economic performance during the second quarter of the first half of the current fiscal year. Minister Saad said the economy maintained its growth rate of 3.9% despite the global uncertainty created by geopolitical factors and challenging world economic conditions. Also, unemployment remarkably decreased down to 7.2% during the second quarter. The weekly cabinet meeting also approved a decision by Local Development Ministry over the operation hours of public shops during Ramadan and the ensuing Eid al-Fitr holiday. Under the decision, all shops will be closed at 2 a.m. The meeting also tackled the current visit of Denmark's Prime Minister and promising opportunities to push forward bilateral cooperation. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister said the national project to develop the Egyptian family aims to improve the demographic characteristics with regards to education, health, job opportunities, economic empowerment and culture. Speaking at the signing ceremony of a cooperation protocol between the Planning Ministry and the Ministry of Financial and Economic Development, Madbouli said the project also aims to control population growth. The protocol deals with the financial incentives within the project, dubbed the National Project to Develop the Egyptian Family. Later, Premier Madbouli inaugurated Ahlan Ramadan exhibition, which offers commodities needed in the holy month at moderate prices. The exhibition included 100 halls, which gather 150 exhibiting companies, besides main halls. Also, Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli attended today the Governmental Excellence Awards ceremony within the framework of Egypt's 2030 vision of sustainable development, which stipulates establishing efficient administrative bodies. The ceremony aims at highlighting Egypt's role of achieving directive targets, which the government is seeking, as well as an adaptation of developments and enhancing human capabilities. This kind of prize encourages the atmosphere of constructive, positive competitions. The ceremony was organized by the Ministry of Planning and Economic Development and attended by a number of ministers and top officials. These were some of the stories making the news today, but now turning our attention to the tourism file. Now, Egypt is working to revitalize the touristic sector here in Egypt, working to make 2023 the year of tourism for Egypt and for all tourists coming from all over the world. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
Egypt, home to ancient pyramids and Red Sea resorts, aims to boost tourism by up to 30% annually over the next 5 years, bringing in private firms to operate sites and inaugurating a huge museum around the end of 2023. In fact, the tourism industry is a crucial source of foreign currency and jobs for Egypt's economy. The sector earned $10.75 billion in the financial year ending in June 2022, up from $4.86 billion the prior year, when it was hurt by the coronavirus pandemic. But it captures a little under 1% of global tourism market, according to Minister of Tourism and Antiquities Ahmed Isa, who said Egypt deserves and should be able to grow its tourism industry by 25% to 30% per annum consistently over the coming decade. And that should get us to about 30 million visitors by the year 2028. The minister said tourism is a product that has the most compelling competitive advantage of all products that Egypt can offer globally, adding that immediate priorities include expanding flight capacity and improving the investment climate by streamlining regulation. He further stressed that we need to increase the number of hotel rooms to 500,000 by 2030 from 212,000 last year, could draw $30 million in private investment, and private companies were involved in pilot projects to manage 10 sites. These include the Giza Pyramids, the Egyptian Museum in central Cairo, and the Grand Egyptian Museum that will soon house the country's most prestigious artifacts. Isa said the repeatedly delayed opening of GEM was likely to happen between October and January. Egypt hopes to attract world leaders to attend the inauguration. The minister noted that a rebound in visitor numbers from European and other markets was compensating for losses from what used to be Egypt's top two markets, Russia and Ukraine, adding he expected a surge in Chinese tourists this year. He said longer term, Egypt would seek to develop the market for independent travelers alongside tour operator packages. Minister Isa noted that the budget for more than 2,000 archaeological sites and 41 museums in 2021-2022 financial year was a modest 3.2 billion Egyptian pounds. The Desert News website highlighted the top 5 travel destinations that are expected to be the most popular in 2023, with Egypt amongst them. The site said that these destinations were chosen as they have new museums that open or ease travel restrictions, making them fine choices to visit for 2023. It highlighted several upcoming tourism activities in Egypt, which it hailed as an icon due to its unique array of features, such as Giza Pyramids, which contain the Pyramid of Khufu, the only remaining wonder of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. In addition to the Grand Egyptian Museum, after its opening, it also mentioned historical Cairo, Alexandria, and a Nile cruise between Luxor and Aswan, alongside a number of famous tourist restaurants.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and we're joined here tonight in the studio by Mr. Sameh Saad, the former consultant to the Ministry of Tourism and the tourism expert. Mr. Saad, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Good evening. Thank you for hosting me.
Mr. Saad, now, whenever we talk about tourism, we always talk about it's a cornerstone of the Egyptian economy, 12% of the GDP. It's a main source of foreign currency. Egypt is basically an open museum. Wherever you go, it's the place where you can, the country where you can go to in any time of the year, spring, winter, summer, autumn, any time. And we talk about the different kinds of tourism related to and connected to Egypt. Now, the world has gone through a lot of changes, a pandemic, always some sort of a geopolitical conflict, now the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. But Egypt needs to be always back where it belongs in terms of tourism. Now, how far do you feel Egypt has dealt with, for instance, the coronavirus pandemic and quite recently, over a year ago now, the Russian-Ukrainian conflict with all the economic and financial crises related to it?
In fact, we had bad luck as Egypt, especially in the tourism sector. We had very good year in 2019. This was the best years of tourism, and then everybody thought that we are coming back to the figures of 2010. You know, in 2010
Yes.
we reached 14.5 million tourists. We made $14 billion as income. And we were very confident that 2019 and 2020 we will hit and exceed those numbers. Unfortunately, the coronavirus came and it hit the whole world and the economy, and nobody was allowed to travel. After the corona, people felt the need of traveling back. You know, people were locked down for a long time, and everybody felt the urge to go and travel again. We started a very good season. I'm talking here 21, at the beginning of 21, end of 21, beginning of 22, and suddenly the war hit. The tourism movement slowed a little bit down. Of course, we were hit because we had 3 million Russian, 1/3 of our tourism was Russians, and Ukrainians were doing a big figure as well. Because of this, the whole world had an economy problem. Things became very expensive, food items, petrol,
Yes.
energy. So we were not very optimistic. I'm talking now about the rest of the season of 22, 23. But for our good luck, really, we started a very good, strong winter season starting from September, October 22 until now, especially with the culture tourism, especially with Luxor and Aswan and Nile cruises. It's touch wood, it's very good. It's very strong. The prices are very good, which was not normal. And we hope to continue like this.
Yes.
The resorts as well, they were not affected very badly, although we thought it will be affected. We had a fantastic summer. The North Coast had a lot of Arabs. One of the hotel, I mean, the owning company told me, one of the hotels made 100 million Egyptian pound in the summer season as a net profit, which was a big hit. And Hurghada and Sharm as well, we are still suffering from the Ukrainians are not coming because they were doing a good figure. We have some Russians, I'm talking in general in resorts. The thing is that they are not as much as before in numbers because of the flight. You know, I mean, not any airline is allowed to travel on certain aeroplanes and certain airlines. So the flow of travel from tourism from Russia is not as big as it is, but we still have Russians everywhere.
Yes. Well, the Russian-Ukrainian conflict started on February 24th of 2022. Now it's a little bit over a year now, and nobody knows exactly when it's going to end. So are we expecting that the numbers will still be low, or will there be some sort of a normality, or people will get used to or adapt to the circumstances of the conflict, and thus maybe more numbers or bigger numbers of Russians and maybe even Ukrainians would come to Egypt? And if so, because you've mentioned that it's about the flights, a problem with the flights, is there something that our Egyptian Airways and the airliners can do about it?
I mean, the big numbers of tourism come through charter flights. Why? Simply the charter is cheaper than a regular flight. We have a couple of Egyptian low-cost carriers goes there, but still, to make the number of 3 million again, you need more traffic. Before the war of Ukraine and Russia, I think a friend of mine who is having a ground service, he was serving 84 flights per week between Hurghada and Sharm. And we are talking about aeroplanes which are minimum size of 500 passengers.
Yes.
So we talk about big numbers. The problem now is the planes are Sukhoi, this Russian famous plane. It's very nice, fantastic, but it's very small. It takes 100 passengers. So the same number of flights, you get much less number of tourism. This is why it's affected. Plus, definitely, there is an economical problem in Russia, and not everybody can afford to travel because it's war. So definitely their economic is hit as well. But Russia is a big country as well. So it's not that they stopped totally. We have some travel. We have maybe 1/3 of what we used to have. And hopefully the summer it will be better, because now Egypt has made some deals that we deal with the same currency, because it's a problem for the Russian and the Russian tour operator to buy dollars and pay accommodation in dollars. Now when things will be all in Russian ruble, I think it will create more flow. It will create good pricing, because the tour operator, the Russian, has to consider different exchange rate for the Russian and stuff like this, so he comes and squeeze for the prices. If it's the same currencies and he doesn't have to see the margin of loss or anything of cost for the dollar, then definitely we will benefit from this.
And also inaugurating new airports other than the Cairo International Airport and the airport in Sharm el-Sheikh and Hurghada. Now, there are new airports being inaugurated, and we've seen recently a story about the Sphinx Airport, which has received also flights coming from Spain, I think. So do you think that will make some sort of a difference?
Having a new airport is very good for the, Pyramid area is a tourism area. Most of the tourists stay in the pyramids area. Why? Simply part of the program is visiting the pyramids, so you don't need to spend time in traffic. Hotels are big over there. And only arriving to the Sphinx is not enough, but should have a domestic flight, because the tourists come to Cairo, he spend the time, and then he goes to Luxor and Aswan. And I think now a couple of Egyptian low-cost carriers are doing Sphinx, Luxor and Aswan as well. And I think it's coming slowly, and I'm sure it will create good traffic to Egypt, because it will increase the number.
Mr. Saad, now you've mentioned the cultural tourism, and one of the most anticipated projects is the Grand Egyptian Museum. Now, this museum has been slated to be inaugurated in 2019, late 2019, and then the coronavirus hit the whole globe, and things were delayed. Now we are seeing some soft openings and some events taking place there, but the main event, the main inauguration of the Grand Egyptian Museum is still to be held. Now, as Egyptians, we're very excited and proud of such a museum, one of the biggest in the world, the biggest for a single civilization in one place. How is this being viewed or anticipated around the world? And what sort of difference can it make for the industry?
I just want to say proudly, I just came from Germany. There is an ITB, International Tourism Bourse of Berlin, and this is it's an event, annual event, mainly for trade business, you know. And this is the 40th year. It has been done since 40 years. And Egypt actually had a big stand. This is the first time since many years we have such a beautiful stand, and I think it was 1,200 square meter. We have 96, 97 exhibitor, Egyptian, either hotel or travel agency.
Yes.
And the whole stand was made on the shape of the Egyptian Museum.
Yes.
Really, I mean, so it was the impression of this travel fair. This is one of the most important travel fairs in the world, this ITB. You have up till 10,000 people are attending this fair in 3 days, so it's a big number. What I want to say is the Egyptian Museum is taking big space. Everybody's asking, everybody's excited. And His Excellency, the Minister of Tourism, announced it might be ready by October 23. But the official announcement will come later on.
Well, you've mentioned the Berlin Tourism Exhibition. You've just arrived from there, and we've seen some of the pictures, and it really does simulate the Grand Egyptian Museum. Now, whenever there's this exhibition, and the Egyptian wing was a big one, but you see other countries as well having their own exhibitions and wings, what sort of, how big of a market share do you feel Egypt occupies within the rest of the countries and the rest of the industries, especially now that if we want to make up for the loss of the big numbers of the Russians and the Ukrainians, we need to target and try to penetrate other markets. How feasible is that? The level of competition we're talking about.
Now, of course, the whole world realized that tourism is a very important for the economy of any country. So the competition is very tough. The new stars coming soon, and they are coming very, very fast, speedy up, is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is doing now marketing in a lot of destinations. The Saudi stand was having one part of the stand is Red Sea area, Neom, which is the new destination they are creating, and Saudi Arabia and Ola. So they are entering into the competition. Definitely they will take part of our market share because, I mean, we have some benefits, like we are only 3 or 4 hours flying from Europe. They have the same. We have nice weather, same. In winter especially, beautiful seas, the same. So Saudi Arabia is coming as a good competitor, which for me it's a plus, because this will create more traffic to our part of the world in Middle East. The question is there any chance to get other nationalities than the Ukrainian? It's not that easy, because again we have a unique position. So we are getting always the market from around us. Nobody will come from India to go to the Red Sea to see the Red Sea, right? But the plus is Japanese and Chinese, which they stopped completely during the COVID, they start to get back, to come back. What is our chance of increasing the number of tourism is to create different market segments, to create different destinations. We have to focus on more destinations, because I will have a certain number of rooms and beds in Sharm and Hurghada, and it will be always the same. Either we increase the number of beds in Sharm and Hurghada, which I don't see it healthy, because sometimes then the competition will be in prices, or we develop new destinations and make it as a new touristic area for other nationalities. Then you as a tourist will come once to Sharm and then once to the new destination. So you came twice to the same country, because every time something new. So we have to work on creating and finding new destinations with different attraction. It shouldn't be all the same. Definitely we will increase our number of tourism.
Well, we do have a lot of destinations. I mean, pardon, the most famous obviously are the Red Sea resorts, Luxor and Aswan, Siwa, the north coast. But what other destinations can we develop at least?
You see, let's talk the North Coast. We start from North Coast. North Coast now is used only 3-4 months a year and then closed the rest.
Yes.
We should work on developing residential tourism. For example, this is another segment of tourism. Residential tourism, I just came now from Berlin, as I mentioned. It was snow, it was very cold, it was raining, really, it was freezing cold. I came here to Cairo and I put a t-shirt and shirt until this morning only, right? And next week it will be the same. So we have to create different market segments. Residential tourism is one of them, that you can invite Europeans to come and stay here. They will spend much less. They will save on energy and cold Europe and dark skies. You wake up every morning with a dark sky because Egypt in winter is nice.
Yes.
And nobody's using the North Coast. So with some organization putting proper rules and regulation and certain things, this could create good traffic. And this could create segments, and this will revive a destination closed for 8 months without using it, you know. So many other destinations could be created because it's there, the infrastructure is there. The houses, the streets, everything. You don't need to go to the desert and build a new city. But just we need to organize ourselves and find where we want to go.
Do you see, Mr. Saad, that the new cities being developed could be potential touristic destinations? I mean, a lot of people are talking about the new Alamein city, obviously, in the North Coast. Also the new administrative capital with the green sort of parks and rivers, the tallest, the highest tower in the whole of Africa. I mean, do you see these also not just being an administrative capital, but also a touristic destination?
It could be. It has a dry weather. It's very good. It could be for habitation. You know, again, Europe in winter is very cold, is very humid, it's not sunny, and the insurance pay for the old people some kind of pension. If we put proper rules and regulation, like I go to a Norwegian, just to say, Norwegian government, you guys, you pay for your people to go to Cyprus and other destinations in winter because it's better for their health than staying at home, spending all this money. What are your rules and regulation? So if I make my destination, certain areas fitting to you, definitely I could create some traffic. And we go now for the new capital because it's made on a good and proper way.
Yes.
So the adaptation will be very easy and simple.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the country is aiming to reach record highs of touristic revenues for this year, as you've just heard from Mr. Saad. From the end of last year and the beginning, the first 2 quarters of this year, tourism has been doing well, but Egypt seeks higher numbers in terms of revenue. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
Egypt's tourism revenues will rise almost 20% in 2023 as more people visit the country on the back of the easing of COVID-era travel curbs. Fitch Solutions forecasts revenues to reach a record high of $13.6 billion this year, up 17.7% from 2022, according to forecasts picked by Bloomberg Shark. The research firm expects as many as 11.6 million tourists to visit the country, up 46% from last year. Tourism revenues have recovered from the pandemic. Tourists brought more than $4.9 billion into the country in the first half of 2022, up from $3.1 billion in the same period a year earlier, according to the most recently available central bank data. This came on the back of a surge in tourist numbers, which rose more than 85% to 4.9 million during the 6 12-month period. The strong outlook for the industry comes on the back of the weaker value of the pound and favorable market dynamics. Officials project revenues to increase to between $13.5 billion and $14 billion in fiscal year 2023-2024. The Tourism Ministry wants to attract as many as 30 million tourists to the country by 2028. Tourism Minister Ahmed Isa said this week more than double the number that visited the country in the year before the pandemic. The government plans to launch a new tourism strategy later this quarter to bring more people to the country, as well as boosting the number of tourists Egypt welcomes each year. It could also be finding ways to increase average spend per tourist by improving its product and positioning. Egypt's tourism revenues rose by 43.5% to a record high of $4.1 billion in the first quarter of the fiscal year 2022-2023, which runs from July to September last year. The number of tourists visiting Egypt from July to September last year rose by 52.2% to 3.4 million, while the number of nights tourists spent in the country increased by 47.1% to 43.6 million. Egypt's government has set new investment targets for the fiscal year of 2022-2023, aiming to reach 7.4 billion in investments for Egypt's tourism sector. The target was announced by Minister of Planning and Economic Development Helal Said. These new targets aim to fortify the tourism and antiquities sector, which serves as one of the most lucrative and vital for Egypt. The country has been working to stimulate tourism post-COVID-19 and the Russia-Ukraine war. Egypt wants to boost tourism by expanding flight routes, bed capacity, and offering travelers an even better experience. Tourism Minister Ahmed Isa said at ITB Berlin that he would like to focus more on those taking individual tours as well as families. A new campaign targeting mainly 12 European countries aims to portray the country's wide-ranging attractions. A discovery of a 9 meters long and 2.1 meters wide corridor behind the Great Pyramid of Giza, known as Khufu Pyramid, was announced. Minister of Tourism and Antiquities said that the discovery is a result of the International Scan Pyramids projects that was launched in 2015 by Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities to study the structure of the pyramids without choosing harmful drilling methods.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, continuing our discussion with Mr. Saad. Now, sir, you've mentioned that it is a tough competition and many countries are vying for bigger shares of the tourism sector. Now, one of the things to try and get more tourists is the marketing, obviously, and promotion. Now, Egypt has been relying heavily over the past few years on digital marketing, maybe getting some celebrities to visit. But is this the only way forward now? How can we maximize or develop such a digital way of marketing? And if not, what other ways can we try and promote Egypt as a destination?
There is always the fastest and the cheapest way, by promoting, shooting and filming movies, international movies in Egypt. It used to be very popular. Unfortunately, for some reasons like putting taxes and some complications, administration complication, this industry stopped. If this industry comes back, it's the best ever advertising you can get. Plus the benefit of filming. You know, when you shoot a movie, then they spend a lot of money. I remember I had a film, actually, James Bond.
Yes.
And part of the film, he was by the pyramids, the sound and light show. It was an adventure of the James Bond movies, but it took place in the sound and light show. And another part of the movie took place in Karnak Temple and Luxor Temple. The year after this movie, you know, tourism boosted in Egypt, in the culture tourism, like so much. And I have seen some Italian films as well were filmed in Egypt or promoting Nile cruises, and it went in. So the only thing is, because millions will see this film, and it's seeing an action happening there, you know. So we have to find ways to bring back this kind of advertising. Just to tell you, like Saudi Arabia now is paying back, if you shoot a film in Saudi Arabia, they pay back 30% of the total cost of shooting the movie. So this is a good incentive. Definitely the international filmmaking companies will think twice about this. And it's tough competition. So if we go this way, this is very fast and short way, in a short time, make a good movie, the whole world will see it. Digital is still good. Inviting celebrities is very good. Holding events still is very good. Using the Egyptian celebrities, you have Rami Malek, you know, who made the film of Bohemian Rhapsody, the Queen story. And he got an Oscar, Rami Malek, in this, and he's Egyptian. Use those guys to come here and invite them for anything, and definitely the followers will follow. And all these are big hits for advertising to Egypt, social media things.
Well, promotion and advertising and marketing, it is something that requires a lot of financing. Now, what sort of, or how much financing and incentives should be dependent on the government, the Egyptian government and the Ministry of Tourism, and the private sector as well? Now, because also the private sector make the biggest sort of numbers in terms of travel agencies and companies and privately owned hotels. So how much should the private sector be involved in really attracting and advertising and promoting Egypt as a destination?
Let's say that the private sector already is doing a big job, because I mean, the travel agency is the one who goes and market for the tour operator, and then the tour operator, when he send business, then it's deal with the travel agent. The government has nothing to do with this. The role of the government is not it's not doing any commercial deals. The role of Ministry of Tourism is putting rules and regulation and making sure that it's happening to ensure the quality and running of the operation. The role of the Egyptian Tourism Authority is marketing the destination, not sales, advertising. So already the public sector, we received 1.4, 1.5 million German tourists in the year 1921, before the pandemic. And this was the big efforts of the travel agency. They made fam trips, they invited. Definitely always the Egyptian Tourism Authority are helping, but the private sector are the one who are doing, because it's a business deal. You tell him, come to me as a tour operator and we will do this program, we will earn this money. I mean, it's a commercial thing. The tour operator, if he's not making money of any destinations, he will not sell it. He's here to make business. So the private sectors are doing a lot. Now they started implementing a kind of fees, which will go to the tourism fund in hotels, in travel agencies. The only hope, I hope, that this money is spent in the proper way, that the government treasury should not carry a lot of finance for advertising and bringing back those.
Yes. Well, the public sector and the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities and the government, they really did a lot during the coronavirus pandemic, and they worked on limiting the number of visitors and guests in every hotel, sanitizing everything, sanitizing even the Nile cruises, the airports, the checks, the vaccines, everything. But you just mentioned that the role of the public sector is to set the rules and regulations that would be comfortable enough for the private sector to operate and make profit. So what more can the public sector do? What sort of adjustments or adaptations should the public sector do to help more the private sector and the travel companies and the hotels and the agencies and the airlines?
Facilitate the flow of tourism, ease and facilitate. I cannot, as a private sector, go and secure a pathway like in winter. Usually, thanks God it didn't happen this season, like sometimes because of the low level of water on the Nile, some boat get stuck. So the Ministry of Irrigation, they clean the road, the pathway.
Yes.
So certain things, private cannot do it. The government, public sector do it to facilitate. So since they took proper measures on the Nile, we didn't hear this season or the last season about any Nile cruise got stuck in the mud because of the low level. This means that they have done a good job. So they always help us to do things. And then our role is to bring tourism. But they will help me to create a new destination. If I am a travel agency, I wouldn't have the budget to promote a new Alamein, for example, for residential tourism. This comes from the public sector. And then my role is to ensure to get the client and to ensure giving him the service and he wants, and to ensure that the feedback goes back very well from the service. So this is the rules.
Mr. Saad, now, since at least, since the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, prices have gone, they skyrocketed. Inflation hit the whole world, not just Egypt. And at the same time, people still would want to travel, but they wouldn't want to pay as much. However, the services that you would provide as a touristic destination, as a company, as a hotel, for the gas, for the food, for the security, for everything, prices went up. So how do we hit the right balance in terms of covering our costs and making some profit, and at the same time attracting the tourists who wouldn't want to pay as much?
With the last devaluation, there is a good margin between the cost increase and the dollar increase. So we are, in tourism-wise, we are making good profit. So it's in our favor for a while. Yes, the food cost has raised up 2 times, 3 times, but the currency exchange rate went up more, so we are doing the balance. The problem, as you said now, just coming from Europe, the prices has been increased up very much. The cost of petrol, the cost of food, and many things. When you go, I'm talking about going to a supermarket. I'm not talking about going to a restaurant, because not everybody goes to the restaurant all the time. But going to the supermarket and see the prices of the goods, it increased. So definitely it affected the life of the normal person. And if he was traveling 3 or 4 times a year, maybe he would travel once or twice maximum. So this is the complicated equation, that to get more people with less money and give the same kind of service. But as I said, the devaluation really is helping a lot to maintain this.
Well, one final question, because we're running out of time. Now, is the domestic tourist, the Egyptian tourist, would he be active enough in Egypt to at least cover the cost? I mean, yes, the foreign tourist is the main source of foreign currency, and it's where the real money is. But does the domestic tourist, can he at least cover a big part of the expenses?
You see, when hotel put pricing, definitely to cover the cost. Nobody will put pricing not enough to cover the cost unless... The problem now, the cost became very high. The domestic flights are expensive, the petrol expensive, everything. So I'm expecting for normal tourism, we'll have less traffic this summer than the other years before, because the package became very expensive and life became expensive. Some people are not suffering, they still have the money, but I'm talking about the majority. I'm not talking about the minority.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, definitely one of the most competitive and vital sectors for any economy, let alone the Egyptian economy, is the tourism sector. A lot of challenges, geopolitical affairs and developments, pandemics, and what have you. I mean, the challenges are big. However, the political will of Egypt to revitalize this sector is much bigger, and hopefully we will be hitting the highest revenues we haven't seen here for years in this vital sector. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank my distinguished guest, Mr. Sameh Saad, the former consultant to the Ministry of Tourism and the tourism expert. Mr. Saad, always a pleasure having you with us.
My great pleasure, always.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Nile International. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for joining us.